And here it finally is. This is the third generation of Amazon's Kindle Scribe, and unlike very minor changes that we've seen introduced in the Gen 2, which was just cosmetic and a little bit of a different screen, third generation is a genuine moving forward. Originally this device was launched, but in US and maybe UK only, at the very end of 2025. We are now in end of April 2026, and it is finally available in Europe. So I ordered the Colorsoft and the black and white with the front light version. That's also coming up in a separate video after this one. Unlike the first and second generation of the Kindle Scribe, which used the 10.2-inch e-ink screen, this time on the third generation, across all three tiers of the devices, we have an 11-inch e-ink oxide type of display for black and white devices, and oxide or IGZO panel for the Colorsoft that we are looking at today. At the basis of it, this is still a Kaleido 3 panel, so this is not like a brand new technology and everything like that, but it has been custom developed in collaboration with e-ink as well, by basically changing and restacking things to create something different. What are the other changes that we have? Well, the resolution remains the same, or the density of the resolution, which is a good thing. So even though we have a larger screen now, we still maintain 300 ppi in black and white content, and on the Colorsoft we have 150 ppi for the color content, which is Kaleido 3 limitation because it has that passive CFA layer on top. Scribe design has lost some thickness, so now we no longer have a 5.8 millimeter, we're down to 5.4 millimeters. We no longer have the asymmetrical design. So the original Scribe had the wider edge here that you could either hold via left hand or the right hand because it had the rotation capabilities, but that is no longer the case. We now have a symmetrical design, and when I say symmetrical, I mean it's all over the place symmetrical, left, right, top and bottom. Typically we get to have three sides symmetrical and then one much thicker or taller. This is not the case here, and that's something that I really like. So I think they managed to actually squeeze out quite a lot of screen real estate out of a very small footprint. It's not only thinner, but it's also went on a diet. So now it's no longer 433 grams, it's down to 400 grams, and it should be 400 grams across the table. In the in-depth review, I will be measuring all of that, but that's what the spec sheet says. While it has lost thickness and weight, it has gained power, and now it's no longer a dual core, it is a quad core inside, and it comes in different variations. We have 16, 32 and 64 gigabyte versions of internal storage, no SD cards, so not expandable, that's all that you get. And this is the 64 graphite version of the Colorsoft. It also comes in a reddish color that they call something different that I don't remember at the moment what it is. Like the previous Kindle Scribes, it does have a front light, which is great because it's an absolute necessity if you have a physical layer of color strips on top of your black and white cells, because that's what the Kaleido screen actually is. It will affect the darkness, fuzziness, sharpness, and the overall kind of image quality, and a front light becomes an absolute necessity. And while it has lost weight, thickness, gained power, it has also gained in the price tag. And boy oh boy, the Colorsoft version, $629 to $679, depending on the versions that you get, and then you can dump in other stuff as well. That's a really steep price. So what does Amazon say about their new Kindle Scribe? What can we expect? And what should we expect from the new generation of the Kindle Scribe? Well, they're saying that these devices should be at around 40% faster when writing and interacting with books, you know, turning pages and all of that kind of stuff. So faster. We got a quad core and we got new technology in screens, so it is entirely feasible that that is something that they will deliver on. And then they're also saying that they have a texture molded glass this time to improve pen friction. And I can't really say that the previous Kindle Scribes had a bad one. On the contrary, they had a really, really good pen friction. And my first impression is that this iteration feels a little bit smoother. I prefer just the tactile feel of the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. That being said, we're talking about marginal differences and personal biases and tastes. So while I might personally prefer the feel and the roughness of the first generation and second generation, maybe other people will prefer this kind of feel. By no means does it feel glassy or hard. It's still very comfortable. It's just that my personal preference is I prefer the older feel. The quad-core SoC we've mentioned, but the new thing is the oxide display technology, and that's like for smoother operation. And not only smoother operation, they are now claiming that they've managed to get the writing latency down to 12 milliseconds, like the Supernote Manta or the Remarkable Paper Pro, although I'm reluctant to mention a Remarkable Paper Pro because it's a different screen and it's using an active pen, while this is still a EMR layer in the back, passive EMR pen, which traditionally they were always, this is my pen of choice. This is a newer kind of generation. It still feels good. We'll see how it performs. But yeah, if they manage to kind of get under 15 milliseconds, then they're getting into that kind of contemporary club, which is what we've come to expect from modern devices, active or passive. What about that oxide display technology? Well, in general, it's basically a new modified display stack, and it has been re-architectured to basically shrink the parallax, which would be the distance from the top of the screen all the way down to the panel and through the stack layers of the screen itself down to the panel, all in the pursuit to kind of make it feel as much as possible to writing on an actual piece of paper on the surface and not actually writing on a surface and having a screen down below. This is a well-known psychological phenomenon of having transparent barriers, introducing a disconnect from immersion and involvement with the activity that you do. And that's why that distance is important. So already now I can see that absolutely, they have managed something that we haven't seen on other Kaleido 3 devices, especially front-lit devices. Of course, in the in-depth review, I will be measuring that in detail, but the first impression, which is what this video is very, very positive, and it actually reflects their claims. On the Colorsoft specifically, they're using something called IGZO or IGZO backplane technology. I don't know too much about it. I just did some basic research. I will read a little bit more about all of that for the in-depth review because I'm interested to understand what it is. IGZO backplane technology has been developed in conjunction with e-ink, and the whole point of it is, of course, reducing that stack, but that was the oxide side of things. But the IGZO thing should be enabling higher frame rates or better refresh rate and finer control over pigment placement, which is crucially important for a Kaleido 3 panel. Because the way that it works, essentially this is a black and white panel. It only has black and white e-ink particles or electrophoretic cells. And they move up and down, they form black, grayscale, white type of an image. And on top of that, you have a CFA layer, color filter array, that is basically physical color strips, RGB, on top of the black and white cells. So how do you produce the color? Well, you produce the color by basically filtering white, gray, or black colors through those color strips. Now, in order to produce a really, really precise and good color, especially to mix the colors between RG and B, non-primary colors, you need to have a really, really precise placement of the e-ink cells and control over the e-ink cells, and on top of that, extremely uniform and good precision of manufacturing of that CFA layer. Because if that's a little bit kind of crooked and all over the place, then that's not going to work. And also, the nature of an e-ink panel with an electrophoretic panel, unlike pixels these cells are all of a different size, different uniformity, different shape, so you can't really guarantee where which cell will be that's going to try and form the image. And that's the main problem of the Kaleido 3 panel technology, and that's what they've been trying to improve, not solve. There's other people saying like solve. No, you can't solve color with the Kaleido 3 panel because it's unsolvable. It has physical obstacles that will never be good. So in a way, it is still something that I maintain a dead-end technology, because there's only so much that you can do before physical limitations that are indisputable that are in place. However, within the framework of those limitations of that technology, this is supposed to be something the best that we've seen. We'll see, and I'm going to be putting that to the test, especially in the in-depth review. But in this view, stick around to the end, because I will offer you something that I think is interesting and something that you may want to engage with. Just a short little interruption here in the video. I hope that you're enjoying it so far. I have just launched the newest version of my daily organizer on mydeepguide.com/shop, and that is one of the best ways that you can actually support the channel and the independence of the channel, because I purchased this device so that I can bring you an independent review and something that's not hype, something that's just more down to the ground, so that you know what to expect if you want to spend upwards of $600 US. The all-new MDO is now coming in different versions and different colors, because you guys asked, so I listened, so there we go. So now you can choose between the annual, academic, or fiscal year calendar, and also for the first time ever we have a splash of color variations on the MDO. And if you opt for the color package, you will get the grayscale version, but you will also get a palette of different colors, and each of the colors comes in neutral and tinted variations. Neutral if you want just a little bit of splash of color, or tinted if you really want to go and pump up those color values all the way up. And there's also a couple of improvements and kind of streamlines and things like that. And I managed to lower the size of MDO even smaller. So if you want to support the independence of mydeepguide, then please head on over to mydeepguide.com/shop and pick up your copy of MDO for your organizing needs, for your calendar, and for your aesthetic needs as well. And now let's continue with the video. On the software side of things, we still have the same kind of stuff, and they are now pushing forward into the AI world, where basically you are going to lose all sense of privacy and ownership of your data. Because now they have AI-powered notebook search, even without exact keywords, so it's like super smart, which means that it needs to contextualize the content of your notebook at any given point to give you the comfort of just searching something and it understands the context. Really powerful, but there are privacy implications here for sure. Then we have AI-generated summaries, handwriting to text conversion, direct document import from Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive, which is something that's kind of good, because traditionally Kindle Scribe is a very, very closed down platform. Build quality is really, really nice, and this is something that you come to expect from Amazon. The really cool thing about Kindles before, and Kindle Scribe especially, was that they managed to actually deliver this exceptionally good build quality and the design and materials at a very, very competitive price. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case, because now we're talking about $600, almost $700 US kind of a device package, and at that price point, it better look freaking amazing. And the good news is that it does. So it's light, it's thin, it's perfectly manufactured, no issues anywhere at all. The aluminum body here is really, really nice and pleasant to the touch. Not too slippery. Well, it is a little bit, but not super slippery and kind of bad. And I'm really happy to say that we still have anti-slip pads, which is something that's really, really needed. Well, on this cloth, it will kind of slide because the feet can't do much, but when you put it on a flat surface, they do their job, and then the Kindle stays in place and doesn't slip around. I like the minimal design, as I've already commented on the uniform margin edges of the device. I think that it's really, really nice. Ergonomics, well, for me, they're fine. There's going to be people who are going to not like the departure from the asymmetrical design, but hey ho, that's what we got. So for me, I think that this works. It's kind of leaning a little bit more towards an iPad both price-wise and design-wise. Whether or not that's a good thing, I leave it up to you. Let's do the first power-up. Let's see what the first impressions are in isolation, because in this video I'm purposefully not going to compare this to any other device. I will do that in an in-depth review or in a separate video, we will see. But here I want to look at the Kindle Scribe Colorsoft in isolation to see what my opinions are, what my biases are, how am I going to perceive this device in isolation, and how is empirical data that I'm going to be introducing in the in-depth review that comes later on once I do all of the testing, how is that going to affect my impression of it, your impression of it, overall impression of the Kindle Scribe Colorsoft. So let's power it up. You only have one button and it's right there. Press and hold. And let's see if it comes pre-charged. Hopefully it does. There we go. Let's see the onboarding process. Usually with Kindle, it's very simple and straightforward. So I hope that they stay that way. Yes, we choose English. We go next. Choose my region. Well, yeah, okay, fine. And there we go. So now we have the first taste of the color. It looks nice. It's not blowing me out of the, seat, but it does look nice. It's what I particularly like is the ability to kind of have a gradient here with minimal artifacting, although the smudginess makes it kind of difficult to see. But hey, that's the reality of it. That's why I'm doing it like this, because yeah, it's also part of the device and part of the experience. So let's set up my Kindle. There we go, we are connected. Get the newest experience and update. Well, it's not giving me an option to avoid the update. Updated, and now we have the continuation of the onboarding process. Experience the paper-like clarity of Kindle. Special type of screen that is designed to look and feel like paper. You may notice the screen refresh occasionally, that'll help blah blah blah. So we're not going to set up a passcode right now, and let's see. Yes, navigating, you can go down. Yes, we can go like this. We have our traditional type of thing. I'm going to lower the brightness because we are in really bright conditions, but you can see that the inherent darkness of a Kaleido panel, it's not something that you can escape. So even in really well lit conditions, you can notice a bit of a difference that the front light does introduce. And we are welcomed by the absolute terribleness and awfulness of what is the Kindle user interface, which I find absolutely offensive and horrible. Let's first get some of the books and some of the documents to check out the image quality, the display quality, the color quality, and after that we're gonna take some notes and see how that performs. I got 3 documents that I'm going to be checking out. A normal book, so that we can see black and white content and the sharpness of characters. We have a comic book for colors and a document that is full of photographs to see how the color content renders. So let's start with a traditional Kindle book. And let's see the speed of it and how it actually performs. This is my note, and I can say like, hey, that's my note, and it's gonna kind of collapse into a sticky note, reposition everything, and that's pretty much it. And to make it worse, if you try and kind of select it and kind of delete it, then you won't. It's just gonna add another one, and then you try to kind of delete it like this, and it's not really going to kind of delete the main thing. The way to do it is to actually tap on it and delete the whole section, because it's actually just introducing an object that's inserted into the content that contains the handwriting that you have. If you want the margins, you tap on the side here, and this is where I can do my writing normally, right? So that's basically it, and then when you're done, you just kind of collapse that and it's always available like an extra piece of paper on the site. It's not ideal, but I think that it works. However, that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to kind of see what the performance is like. So this is pretty good. Yes, it's fairly dark, fairly muted. It doesn't really feel that yellow, to be honest. But okay, so we'll see how this kind of works. Okay, so let's say that I want to do some highlights, and I'm going to use a highlighter that's going to be, let's test all 3 colors so that we can see how it works. And for that, let's zoom in. All right, so let's do some yellow over here. And let's just kind of add a little bit more for the whole thing and a little bit here. There we go. Then we're going to switch, no. We're going to switch to green. And let's do a little bit of green here. Oh, it changed the color overall. So you can't have, can you? Yeah, you can. It was just too close. So let's have cyan here. Okay, let's try and reintroduce yellow because we need to be able to compare these things. It's changing the whole thing. All right, so here we're going to have yellow. Then we're going to have this whole thing green. Yes, there we go. Now we have to kind of keep a little bit of a space between. Let's do this for these two and add a little bit here. So far the precision of doing the highlighting and all that is quite good. And we have the orange color. Orange, glad I didn't say banana. And we do a little bit of here, and that's that. So those are the highlighting colors that we have, and they render okay, albeit quite a bit dark. So at this point, let's introduce a halfway point of the front light, and immediately it's starting to brighten things up. And when we pump up the color all the way, it actually pops the color nicely. What can happen sometimes in some of the Kaleido 3 devices is that depending on how the front light is implemented, the front light can wash the colors out. I've seen it happen more often than not. That is absolutely not the case here, and that I think is thanks to that custom stack that they've done, and you do get really, really good results here. So the front light actually helps with the color content, with the brightness of the screen, and when you, in these conditions at least, when you pump the front light all the way to the maximum, then you get this kind of whiteness of the page that is more reminiscent to a traditional non-Kaleido 3 panel, which is a good thing to see. Unfortunately, that's going to introduce the battery consumption issues, where it's going to be much, much more, because you're using a lot of front light. And when you take it down, yeah, well, then you have that greenish tint, kind of faded text and faded colors, which I guess is going to be good outside on direct light, I hope. I will be testing that out also in the in-depth review. But for here, yeah, for indoors results, I am inclined to actually use more than half of front light. For me, I think somewhere around 14 to 16 gives me a nice optimal look of the colors and the background of the of the page itself. The rendering is okay, so this is without the front light, and we'll just give you a couple of examples here with the zoom in, so that you can see how the characters are rendered. Ghosting is good for the text content, and what's also nice is that when we go through areas where we did have some kind of color content, and we go to another page where there's no color content, the ghosting is nice. And now let's pump up the front light to the maximum so you can see how the characters look like when they are rendered here. Overall, for reading, it looks really, really good. A little bit on a fuzzier side of things for thicker kind of fonts, for my taste at least. but the front light does a lot of heavy lifting. Without a front light, I'm not a fan. I definitely am not a fan, and I can actually see the structure of the CFA layer, which gives me a little bit of a kind of feel. But yeah, as soon as you pump up that front light, yeah, it's going to eat a lot of battery. But as I said, it does a lot of heavy lifting, and it helps alleviate a lot of shortcomings that the Kaleido 3-panel technology has. So that's a nice thing to see. All right, now let's open up a comic book and see how that works. So for now, I'm just gonna give you this type of impression. We don't have a front light, so I'm gonna have you show you a couple of panels here without the front light. We can double tap to zoom in so that you can see the rendering of colors a little bit better. They're kind of okay. So this is a particularly difficult page for Kaleido panels because you have red, which is always a difficult thing, and we have different shades of blue. And even though the blue rendering is the strongest point of Kaleido panel, it can be difficult for it to differentiate between, but it's managing to do that okay. Now, this one in particular is going to be quite interesting because one of the most difficult colors for a Kaleido panel to render precisely is green, and especially to differentiate it between green and blue. And yet here we are getting quite a bit of clarity here. So now this is a very busy panel, and I want to kind of focus on it. And let's add front light to about halfway point, and let's see how that affects the colors and the content. For me, it kind of helps, again, it's just a helping hand to what the Kaleido panel needs. Let's go back here. No, I just want to go back. All right, and if we pump up the front light all the way to the maximum, again, the same story continues. Basically, they've calibrated the front light to alleviate the shortcomings of that CFA layer. And I think that they've done it in a really, really good way. Especially if you start kind of using it like this and you see the difference between, let's just kind of zoom in here. So you can see, you know, how close to the surface all of this is and how it looks in different angles. And some people may say like, hey, well, you know, the iPad costs that much and that much. Well, yeah, look at the reflections here. Look at how it behaves when you're reading it in angles, and look how close to the surface the actual content is. That's the whole point of an e-ink panel. So let's keep zoomed in state here a little bit more and go through a few panels so that you can see the colors and the content in detail. To me, this looks really, really good. So for comic books, especially for comic books, the Colorsoft lends itself really, really well, but it does require that front light. Without it, it just kind of goes into this, muted and, for me, not pleasant type of a reading experience. But once you pump it up, then it becomes very, very pleasant and very, very nice. But now we're going to do the real tests. So comic books are fine, but the document here with a ton of color pages, this is something that I know really, really well. And this is something that puts Kaleido panels to the test. So let's open it up and see what do we actually get. This is a particularly important document here for me because I know exactly how other devices perform, and this is a one-to-one comparison. And transition between these three pages, this one, and this one, basically puts the panel and the programming to the test, because you will see remnants, ghosting, if it doesn't clear up properly or things like that. None of that here. We don't see the remnants of the big blocky white letters on the dark content here. When I swap over here, I don't see the remnants of the spires, and when I go back, I don't see the vertical spire and I don't see the blocky text. On all three counts, this passes in a really good way, except on the fingerprint smudginess aspect. My impression here is that this is a lot darker than other Kaleido 3 devices. It's just an impression that I have, so I'm purposefully not going to compare, as I said, simply because I want to see what the biases are and how do we actually perceive these things in isolation and in context. Deghosting is very, very nice. So here it's a bit of hit and miss. We get to see a little bit of ghosting here. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up, but that's why the document is here, to actually test out, you know, the edge conditions and the difficulties, especially this page on a Kaleido 3 panel, the greens, different greens and yellows, very difficult stuff for a Kaleido panel to achieve. So here, again, I'm gonna zoom in so that you can see the clarity of characters. Now, these characters are never going to be as clean to read as on a pure black and white device, because you do have that physical obstacle on top of them. And thinner the characters are, more it's going to be pronounced. And you can probably even see it here, especially like, for example, or Rome. You can see the R, how it's all kind of jaggedy, and the M and everything else. So these things, that's the physical obstacle that Kaleido 3 panel has, that a black and white panel won't have to deal with. For a Kaleido panel, it is nice and good readability. The colors, we have quite a dark representation here, even with the front light set to absolute maximum. I'm looking at the colors and I can definitely see, like, this looks great and the comic book looks great. And I mean, this can't be right. This, I seem to remember maybe that Kindle had contrast. Okay, so its contrast is at 3. Maximum is 4, so the default value is the one. Okay, I'm hedging my bets or hopes that we're gonna get much better results if we lower the contrast. So there we go. Okay, yes, that works better, but that's also exposing the ghosting issues. Sneaky. Okay. I see what you did there. There you go. Now we have quite a bit of ghosting. All right, but at least it's no longer that really, really dark performance, because you had, like, I was looking at this image previously and I was just like, what the hell is going on? It's like, I can see that there's colors, but it's so dark. Why would they put contrast at 3? So you can actually make it more washed out, but this is a little bit too much. So let's see, yeah, depending on what you actually want, you do have this kind of a control, but less contrast we have, yeah, we're starting to expose a little bit of color banding here, and it's starting to become quite pale at the moment. But this is actually nice. I do like this. This is much nicer for me, for example, these pages, and especially these, than the default setting, which was absolutely way too much. Yeah, I mean, look at this image. This is like ridiculous. This is what the default setting is, and then let's put it to something more normal, such as contrast 2. Yeah, this is a darker image, but you can at least see clearly where things are. All right, so this is a different story altogether, and yeah, you should definitely be aware of the contrast setting and how it works. So now we lowered contrast to the minimum. Simply, I want to see what the range is and how it works. This may be a little bit too much, but it works for images, and especially for darker images, it works for images that have less contrast. But I think that the value midway is pretty much the best one, because it offers a nice type of a contrast here. Yeah, especially for this image, this looks quite nice. and you can see that it's kind of this image here. You can still see things properly, while if I go to contrast setting 1, now it's washed out a lot of details here. So, and here we're starting to lose some details as well. So I think I'm going to keep it at contrast 2 for something. Yeah, this is the nicest balance so far. All right, cool. So that definitely the darkness thing is not the panel itself. It was the contrast calibration and the default setting of the contrast itself. Set it to 2. And now let's test the writing capabilities here. So we're going to create a new notebook. We have the onboarding here for same type of thing, which is something that I like. So you have what you've learned in the documents and how the system works, translates naturally to your notebooks. We have hold to snap into smart shapes with the pen. Okay. And right now we're at full front light. So without the full front light intensity, this is what we get. So let's take a normal fountain pen and make it black. And let's do just a basic writing test. All right, so this feels really, really good, super fast, and with the front light, it looks even better. In any kind of interaction under these lighting conditions, I am inclined to use the front light because I simply don't like how it looks at all. It's not visually pleasant without the front light. Let's start a little bit of writing with, we have the gray color shader, which is interesting. I'm wondering if the shader is able to blend colors, because Kaleido is not Kaleido is not able to do that, so don't expect proper shading. The pencil itself is tilt and pressure sensitive properly. It feels good. It's not as good as Remarkable. Writing pen. The red color is nice. Orange color differentiation. Yellow is different and readable. But how readable is it when we turn off front light? It remains readable. That's a good thing to see. So we got our green, whoops, there we go. Green color test and do, oh, what? This is a little bit more slippery pen than it was before. Huh, okay. Cyan color for us. Blue color, purple, pinky pop. There we go. So those are all of the colors that you have at your disposal. That's how they look like without the front light in really high bright conditions. Front light at 50% and then front light at 100%. Writing performance is excellent across the board. No, you won't have any writing performance difference between red or different colors, simply because we're still moving just those black and white particles, and the color is created by that passive CFA layer. So there will be no performance difference whether you use the colors or not. Where there will be a difference is in the quality of the resolution. So they are stating 150 ppi for color content, which is kind of true unless you are writing in prime colors. So RG and B, those are effectively going to be down to 100 ppi. So yeah, you have to kind of keep that in mind. And the question, can you notice something like that? Well, you be the judge of that. So this is the blue color here. If you can see the kind of pixelation of the blue and there. And I'm just gonna do just the same thing and do blue color, same pen, but this time in black, so that you can actually see that, yeah, that resolution differentiation, yeah, you can actually see it. So the writing precision and the writing feel is good on the Colorsoft, but as I mentioned, the writing surface here, the new writing surface that they have, is a little bit too smooth for my taste. I prefer the old Gen 2. This pen itself also, it's a little bit too smooth when compared to the material that was used on the original Kindle Scribe Premium pen, which is the pen that I still prefer to use, and I use it daily, so I know it really, really well. This doesn't feel like it. It's nicely balanced and everything, but it's slippery. It wants to come out of my hand and I have to kind of control it, which is definitely not the case with the other pen. And another thing here is that, well, we do have colors and things. I kind of almost got distracted, but yeah, if we take a felt tip and yeah, we just use, yeah, the pressure sensitivity is not well calibrated. So this is the minimum pressure where I just kind of touch it, and this is the maximum that I can get, and it's quite a bit of a difference. Let's zoom in so that you can see more clearly. The minimum is way too big. You see, there's absolutely like nothing. We just get into that one, and then when I start pressing ever so slightly, it's just a bigger blob. There's no nice kind of expansion, which is something that previous Kindle Scribe absolutely had, and it was a wonderful thing, that how the pressure sensitivity was calibrated, but this is no longer the case. So now with the smaller, with the smaller pen brush, or the brush size, it still doesn't work. We still have the same issue. It's just proportionally scaled down, and we don't have enough of a pressure range for this to actually be very, very expressive. So that's quite surprising to me. I really, really have to say. I did not expect that, because it feels like a regression from something that was exceptionally good on the previous Gen 2 and Gen 1 scribes. And we're talking about the new pen. Why is it pure white? You pay like upwards of $600 for the cream of the crop that, you know, Amazon Kindle can offer, and we're getting the same pen that just doesn't match anything. Like there isn't a single pure white thing on this whole device. Cost-saving measure on a premium device? And now let's check out the front light of the Colorsoft. I have locked down the camera, white balance, focus, and let's see, focus. Yes, everything is locked down in an effort to try and faithfully record as much as possible, both the intensity and most importantly, the uniformity and the color aspect of the front light, because for a Kindle Scribe this is actually quite important. So we have now right smack in the middle color and the intensity. This is 50% all over the place, and you can see that it's a very pleasant hue and it's really, really consistent. We don't have any kind of bleed, we just have ever so slight shading here. Really, really slight and not really noticeable if you don't look for it. But other than that, I think that it looks really good. The color aspect, yes, this pays off. What you see here is basically how it looks like in reality. This is the fully cold and this is fully warm. So we have quite a nice range between these, and you can just fine tune it and set it up how you like. What I do appreciate is there's no color bleed either in the cold or on the front stack of the front light, or the warm, sorry. So now let's go with the intensity all the way up to the maximum. And yes, it's bright because we're in completely dark conditions, but you can see that the uniformity is really good. It remains good, and the colors, they still remain quite good. So let's try and lower this to something that I think that I would prefer to use, that's very pleasant. So some settings like this. This is something that I think would work for me. And the cool thing is that the range is quite nice. So you can go quite low. So overall, excellent front light and fairly impressive what they managed to do, considering that they've flattened out that whole stack. The first impressions of the Kindle Scribe so far. The rendering of the colors is really, really good. However, there is that darkness to it. And when you compare or combine that darkness with the reflectivity, which is not bad. It's a standard, okay, good reflectivity. Could be a little bit better, but it's okay. And a little bit of a smudginess here. Even that smudginess is not out of the ordinary. My first impression is that the only reason why I'm reacting to the reflections and the smudginess as well is simply because the content of the screen is simply darker than what I am used to. Maybe they absolutely had to do something like that to get the contrast and to get the image to actually be of a quality that it is, and which is truly an excellent image quality for a Kaleido panel. But is it something that solves color on e-paper devices? In my book, absolutely not. Is it something that's different and, you know, offers something else? Well, that is something that I want to put myself and you guys to the test as well. Because what I'm going to do next is, I haven't done it yet, so I don't know what the results are going to be, and I don't know how it's going to look. But I've come up with an idea, and the idea is to render in super highly controlled lighting conditions that I use for my display analysis framework testing in in-depth reviews in the DAF methodology. I'm going to take images of the same exact page under same exact lighting conditions, and I'm going to take those images with and without the front light between 4 devices. One of the 4 devices is going to be the Kindle Scribe Colorsoft, and it's going to show either a color wheel and another image, or just one of the two, we'll see. And I'm not going to tell you what the other 3 devices are, and I'm not going to tell you which of the collages that you will be seeing. Maybe if I do the editing now, right now on the screen, you might be seeing those collages. I'm just simply going to, you know, tell you that they are devices, Kaleido device 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I want both you and I to check our biases to see how do we perceive a device like this in isolation, and how will we be able to perceive it in context, which is something that I hope that I will be able to bring with the DAF methodology analysis in the upcoming in-depth review, as well as how it actually compares to other devices without the biases involved. Because think about it, if you just click on a video and it has some super positive connotations in a title, and you've seen many titles like that. It's like, oh, Kindle Scribe, it's supposed to be the best, and it's supposed to give you the best colors. That in itself is already an influence, and it is moving you towards certain types of expectations. And that's introducing a bias. So my hope is that with these 4 collage images here, I'm extending a question to you guys to participate, and I really hope that you do actively participate. Which one do you think out of these 4 is the Kindle Scribe Colorsoft? Is it the device number 1, 2, 3, or 4? And the question B would be, which one do you like the best? I will absolutely reveal the results at the beginning of the in-depth review that's going to be coming out in about 2 weeks, I think, from when you see this video. So absolutely stay tuned for that, and I'm going to give you some reminders so that you can actually see what the results are, and then we can also collectively check each other out, how the bias functions, what the isolation is, what the context is, and how all of that kind of works. There we have it. That's the first look of the Kindle Scribe Gen 3 Colorsoft. I invite you to participate actively in the blind test that I've introduced in this video. I think that this is really, really important, and we should get as many people as possible to actually vote here and to give us some, like a realistic picture of what's what. You can find that all of the details are in the description down below, where to go, which page, and what to do. So I'm going to set up a web page where you're going to be able to just kind of vote, and I'm going to keep it for until about 2 weeks or something like that to gather a little bit of data. And then the in-depth review will come out, and I'll include that there, and then we'll analyze and see what's what. I will reveal which devices are which, and which are the devices that, Kindle Scribe was actually comparing to. So that's something that I'm really personally looking forward to. I wonder about you guys. What do you think? The first impressions are a mixed bag, honestly, for me. I tried to purposefully not watch other reviews, not read other reviews, and I always do that for pretty much all of the products that I review on the channel, simply because I want to try to form my own opinion. And that is especially important for first impression videos, because I want this to be my own genuine first impression. For the Kindle Scribe, I haven't watched a single review, but I couldn't really stay away from the thumbnails, I couldn't stay away from the video titles, and I couldn't stay away from articles or anything like that that would pop up. I had some influence by the article titles and the video titles for this specific device. As far as the Kindle Scribe Colorsoft goes, well, it is something new. So my first impression is that I love the fact that they did the stack to minimize it as much as they did, and that the front light is actually able to perform really well with that minimized stack height. That's a genuine improvement as far as I'm concerned. I really like the fact that it's kind of sleeker, thinner, equal bezels around the edges, all of that kind of stuff. I really like the design. It's very, very cool. It feels good in the hand. It's excellent to write on, although not as good as, for me personally, as the Kindle Scribe Gen 1 or the Gen 2. I personally preferred the surface of the screen on those two better. I'm a huge fan, and my daily driver is the OG Kindle Scribe Premium pen. I don't like the new version. I don't like the new materials that they're using. It's a little bit more slippery, and that creates a little bit more, as you've already seen, it's kind of, the pen just wants to slip out, which is something that basically never happened with the original pen, and I use it daily. It is blisteringly fast as far as the writing latency goes, so that's really good. But the elephant in the room is obviously the screen. Color representation, when you can see it, is really good, but that's my main issue. I still haven't seen the collage or anything like that. I'll do all of that later on, but the impression that I'm left with after testing it in isolation is that colors look really, really good and impressive, but they're fighting the reflections and they're fighting the smudginess of the screen. That's the part where I think the in-depth review is going to kind of give a little bit more perspective for that, because I'm going to be able to test it out outside and compare it to other devices. And I'm genuinely interested to see if that darkness that I perceive is something that will be reflected when I compare it, take it out of isolation and put it into context of the environment of other Kaleido 3 devices that we already have, most of which are not at this price point. That also is, I think, negative here. You need to pay upwards of $600 for essentially a Kindle with, granted, nice colors, but my question remains, why does this matter? Why is everyone going out waving their arms about this one? What? Why? I have it, I've tested it, it's fine, but it's not great. What am I missing here? Please do enlighten me, and I do hope that the quantifying the results and putting it through the paces and seeing like, okay, so let's see if some of the quantified results will shed more light to me and to others who may be also confused with what's the big deal. Okay, it's a color Kindle. And I don't see a reason for anything to justify the price, let alone the hype that we actually see around this device that is online. And at this point, I can call it a hype simply because I've had my first-hand experience with this device, and yeah, it's a hype. It's not a real thing. So that's the first impressions of the Kindle Scribe Gen 3 Colorsoft in this video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!